Hello, my friends, and welcome to week 5 of Creating Relationships You Love. This introductory video, I just want to introduce this topic and talk a little bit about why it matters, and then we're going to dive right into the worksheets of some of the suggestions and recommendations that I have for you guys to really play around with, give some thoughts to, and practice as you kind of move through the coming weeks and months in order to show up as a better partner so that you can have a better relationship. So as you know, as we've moved through this entire series, there have been some themes and some repeating patterns that I've really wanted to highlight and talk about. This entire 6-week series, this is really more of just an overview and kind of an introduction to this material. As we said in our group session last time, I mean, there's so much packed into each of these lessons. And so truthfully, this is a year-long program that I walk people through on an individual basis. But I wanted to just take this opportunity in this 6-week series to give you an introduction to each of these topics and give you some things to think about. It's more than I know that you're going to retain in a short amount of time, and that's okay. But my hope is that you can walk away with some food for thought and maybe a few things that have come up repeated enough that you can start to kind of notice in your own life and begin to sort of implement. And one of those things that we have really repeated and that I have said over and over again as it applies to each of these lessons is this idea of taking responsibility, right, for our own lives, for our own emotional lives, and also the idea that we can't control other people, right, that the way that they show up in their life, that's going to be their decision, and that we can't control their behavior. All we can really control is our own emotions and the way we decide to show up. And that's huge. And there's some things that came up this week that I just wanted to talk about because I feel like it relates to this topic, and so I want to kind of clarify some of that before we jump in. And so again, one of the monumental keys, in my opinion, to creating relationships you love is becoming the kind of partner that sidesteps negative energy rather than empowering it, and also that learns how to create positive energy instead. I think that's something that's really important to learn how to cultivate. I think it's also really key not only to be the kind of partner that you want to have, right? We talk about if we want to be loved, that we need to show up lovingly first, right? If we want to be trusted, we have to be trustworthy, so on and so forth. But also, I think it doesn't get talked about as much. You hear this idea of being the kind of person, the kind of partner that you want to have, or being the change you want to see in your relationship or in the world. But I want us to consider too being the kind of partner that we want to be. And so often we get stuck in these negative cycles of distrust or resentment or jealousy or being overextended, right? We get really drained, emotionally drained, exhausted, tired, and we're giving more than what we have. So we're not drawing good boundaries. We're not drawing good boundaries around our time, our energy. So many examples and when we really take a look at how we're showing up in those ways, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't really feel good about who we are, right? That's not the kind of partner or person that I want to be. And so we're oftentimes not even loving ourselves because we're not really being authentic, and we're not living out our life and our relationship in a way that truly reflects our deepest values, our most authentic values, and our most authentic life. And so I think that's something that's worth considering too, right? What is the kind of partner and the kind of person that you want to be? And are you showing up that way? Because if you're not, it's not going to feel good to you either. And that can also be part of where love and intimacy and connection is being disrupted. And so I think that's an important consideration. And I just sort of want to mention that before we move into these worksheets, okay? And so a lot of this has to do with relationship identity, right? And relationship presentation, who we are and how we show up in our relationships. This is really huge. It's super key. And it's always, I think, the place to begin. That can take time, right? This is not something that you do overnight or in an hour. Decide, this is who I want to be in a relationship. This is what that looks like to me. These are my values, right? We all have different values in a relationship. For some people, it's connection. For some people, it's intimacy. For some people, it's sex. For some people, it's security, safety. For some people, it's growth. For some people, it's friendship. For some people, it's trust. There's a lot of different reasons that people are in relationship. And it's okay to have different reasons and different values, but it's important to understand what those are. So there's a lot that goes into this. And I just want to preface this whole workshop with that understanding that this is a big topic. And so while all of that is really important to understand and cultivate, and it's really worth figuring out, for now, I just want you to know that this workshop is really just more about what are some places that we can begin, right? What are some little bite-sized things that we can kind of take home and chew on to think about, how can I be a better partner? How can I show up in a relationship in a way that's really strong and secure and safe and loving and kind in order to nurture a happier, healthier relationship? It begins with us, right? So that's what I wanted to start with saying. And I wanted to say a couple other things too. Okay, I wanted to throw the model up here real quick and walk you through a couple points that came up over this past week while we were talking about, or over this past few weeks while we've been talking about all these different ideas as it relates to relationships. There came the question this week about, it seems like some of the things that you're teaching contradict each other, okay? And so I wanted to talk about that because if one person's noticing it or thinking that, I imagine other people are too. Okay, and so one of the things that I've been teaching you this whole series is this idea of personal responsibility, right? We cannot control other people. They are the ones that create their own feelings, right? Our thoughts are what create our feelings. I'm not feeling angry because my partner didn't unload the dishwasher. It's not their behavior. It's not the circumstance. None of that is what's creating my feelings, right? My emotion is created in my own brain. And that's true for everyone in this world, right? It's true for me. It's true for my partner. It's true for my mom, my dad. And so the question came up, essentially, I think the underlying question was, Robin, if that's true, why bother becoming a better partner? Why bother being a good person? Why bother changing my behavior at all? If it does not matter what I do, if I cannot do anything to make my partner feel loved, feel appreciated, feel nurtured, if truly what you're saying is that that's entirely in their control based on the thoughts they think, it sounds like you're saying behavior doesn't matter, which is not what I'm saying. So if it's true that thoughts produce our feelings, that's where emotion comes from. The question is, why bother with being a better partner? Why bother changing my behavior? And I think the part that felt like a contradiction was that I said, on the one hand, we're each responsible for our own emotions, for our own emotional life. We're each responsible for our own happiness we created in our brains. And then I said this other thing about, if you want to have a happy marriage, be a happy partner. If you want to be loved, then give love first. If you want to be trusted, be trustworthy. What I'm about to show you in these worksheets is how to be a better partner. We're going to talk about behaviors, right? We're going to talk about actions. We're going to talk about things that you can do to create love in your life. And I think it felt like a contradiction to say, you said thoughts create feelings, and now you're telling me behaviors make for a better marriage. This doesn't make sense, right? If I can't make my partner feel loved, why does it matter what I do? Why don't we just say it's all on you to think loving thoughts about yourself and then you'll feel loved? And so I want to talk a little bit about why behavior matters, okay? Because that is true that our thoughts create our feelings. That's always true. We are always responsible for how we feel about something. And the thing about behavior is that behavior does matter. Our actions, our behaviors in the world, they do matter. Why do they matter? Because if you remember the model that I've taught you, thoughts are what produce our feelings. This is true. Our feelings are what generate our actions. Our actions, our behaviors, are ultimately what create our results. So they matter. If I lay in bed all day and don't apply for jobs, the result I'm going to get is no job. If I cuss my boss out, the result I'm going to get is probably that I'm not going to have a job anymore. And so the way that we show up, the way that we show up with our kids, the way we show up in our marriages, the way we show up in our jobs, it absolutely has impact in our lives. So just because behavior cannot change another person's mind doesn't mean that it doesn't have an impact. And so what happens is we're looking at two different models. So that question, it's like, this is my model, right? A circumstance happens that triggers a thought in my brain, which produces a feeling in my heart, in my emotion, which generates action and behavior. And the way I show up is what creates the results I get, right? So when I'm feeling motivated in my business, I show up and I'm working and I'm doing all this, that generates actions. And I'm taking more action, I'm doing more things, and I'm all on top of it. And that action, that behavior of showing up and showing up and showing up creates results in my life of bigger business, right? If I'm thinking defeating thoughts and I'm feeling defeated and unmotivated, the action or behavior that results is, let's say I lay in bed all day and I don't do anything. I don't take action. What does that create? That creates no momentum, no gain. So behavior matters. Behavior is big. It creates the results in our lives. So if we want more love, if that's the result we want, love, intimacy, connection, then we do need to figure out, how can I create behaviors that are in alignment with that result? Again, that's on us. That is our responsibility. You cannot create love, connection, intimacy, money, abundance, finance, creativity, innovation, momentum. You cannot create positive results in your life with negative behaviors. So your behavior does need to be in alignment with your ultimate goal. Does this make sense? It's true that we are responsible for our own lives. So if you want love, connection, then you need to have behaviors that are loving, right? And that create connection. The reason we talk so much about thought is because this is the part that people miss. So often people just want to focus on the behavior to get the result. What do I got to do in order to make money? What do I got to do in order to, make this marriage last? And we so focus on behavior. The reason I bring you up here so much is because this is the part people miss. Your behavior needs to be in alignment, but so do your thoughts. So do your feelings. So it all needs to be in alignment, in integrity. Otherwise, you're not going to get the result. If one of these things is out of whack, then you're not going to get the result that you want. And so that's part of why behavior matters. So I do want to say that. And yes, it's true that you can show up and you can be the best partner in the world. And if your partner is not willing to get out of his or her negative stories, you can show up with positive behaviors, right? And your model can all be positive, 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 love, 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 love. And you can give that to a person. And if they are unwilling to experience loving thoughts, if they are unwilling to get out of their negative stories, they will not feel loving feelings. Even if you're showing up with all the love and nurturing that you can, if they've got a block and a wall there, they very well may not receive it. So that's true. Having said that, if you're showing up as a shitty partner, there's probably also going to be a block there that they're probably also not going to receive it as loving. And so these positive behaviors that I'm about to teach you, it's giving you your best chance. If you show up as a loving, nurturing partner and you take responsibility for, I'm going to think loving thoughts, create loving feelings, take loving action to create a result of love. If you do that and you stay in alignment, you're going to get that result. Even if the love just comes to yourself, even if you're like, I love me, right? And you're going to create more loving relationships with your kids. And sometimes it starts in all these outside areas before your partner ever shows up that way. And at the end of the day, it's true that you cannot control them. So this is going to be all your model, and they're going to have to make a decision at the end of the day about what they want to do. So that's why behavior matters. It does need to be in alignment in order for you to get that result. And yes, at the end of the day, they are responsible for whether or not they create their own happiness, for whether or not they are willing to feel the emotions of love, appreciation, joy, creativity, excitement, innovation, all the things, curiosity, like they get to decide that. But if that's the result we want is love, if we want a positive result, we do need to show up with positive behaviors. because we cannot be out of alignment and out of integrity and still get the result. So the idea of responsibility, we are responsible for our own model. We're responsible for our own life, right? We're the ones that get to decide. And if we want the result of love, connection, intimacy, then we also need to be responsible for showing up in alignment with loving thoughts, loving feelings, and loving behaviors. So that's where the integrity and alignment piece comes into play. And then you see what your partner does with it. They may or may not receive it, and that's on them. But you're never going to get the result you want if you won't show up in alignment. One of the principles that's so important too about why do we show up with these behaviors, why bother showing up with loving, nurturing, compassionate, forgiveness, why show up that way if it doesn't guarantee that they're going to still feel love, right? If my behavior is not what creates her feelings, right? So say I show up loving and she still hates me because it's her thoughts that produce her feelings, not my behavior. So if that's true and she's still going to shut me down, why bother showing up that way? And my answer to that is, A, if you don't give yourself your best chance by being in alignment with what you want, you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're not going to get it for sure. 2, it feels better for you. It feels good to be in love. Even if I'm drawing a boundary, even if I'm deciding to leave a relationship or quit a job or take a break from a friendship, or, even if I'm making a difficult decision, I would rather do it from a place of love than from a place of anger, resentment, right? It just feels better in my body. Instead of saying, I hate you and I'm leaving, I would rather say, I love you and I'm leaving. Like, it just feels better for me. I would rather be in a place of love, forgiveness, compassion, nurturing. It just feels in integrity with who I am. And so that's another important thing, is these behaviors, we get to be the ones who feel good about the person that we are, right? I get to feel good about my character. I get to feel good about who I am. It grows my character. It grows my integrity. It grows my authenticity. I get to be proud of the person that I am because I'm showing up with behaviors that I approve of. Even if my partner decides that they don't give a damn about all the effort I'm putting in, I give a damn, right? It feels good to me. And the reality is, by doing it, I'm giving myself a chance that they just might give a damn, and it could change everything. And even if it doesn't, I get to feel good about who I showed up as. I get to know that I left everything on the field and that I grew into a person of character, of love, of integrity, of forgiveness, of compassion, of creativity, of innovation, willing to experiment, willing to try new things, willing to go all in, right? I showed up as my best person, and that feels good to me. That's how the principle of personal responsibility goes hand in hand with this idea of reciprocity, right? So you have to be in alignment to get the result you want. So the behavior does matter. And when you show up with those behaviors and you put love into the world, there is this idea of reciprocity, and the universe and the world will absolutely bring it back to you. And it may not always look the way you thought it was going to look. What we put out in the world creates our results. It's what we will get back. If you have any questions about that and how it works, if you still feel a little confused, feel free to let me know. But I just wanted to talk about that before we moved into these worksheets, because like I said, if one person was kind of wondering how that fit together, I imagine other people probably were too. So on that note, I will see you guys in the next video, and we're going to talk about how to be a better partner. What are some recommendations for some actions and behaviors that we can show up with that will create more positive results in our lives? So I will see you guys in the next video. All right, bye-bye.